So let's take a quick look at Interact HRMS. Interact HRMS is a global enterprise HR, payroll, time, talent, benefits, and risk management solution, which covers the entire life cycle from hiring to separation with an employee. Now, it is also an international product, which means that we can configure the same system to operate in pretty much any country. We currently support 35 countries. There are many countries that we could easily support with minimal customization, and others which may, of course, require significant customization. But in all cases, the product is designed so that you can support those countries and that customization can be done relatively easily. Now, it's a pure browser-based product. Everything is developed in PHP, and as a result, we can deploy this in the cloud or on-premise, whichever way you want. It is also a multi-tenant solution whereby we can do everything in one single database, or we can set up multiple databases, a single database for each client, whichever way you want to, but all running under the same installation. Now, I'll give you a quick orientation of the product. On the left-hand side, you see my regular tasks. These are pretty much my favorites that I've saved here because I want to have frequent access to it. Here I have HR workflow activities. Here I have some KPIs that I can access, and I can view those in different colors and shapes and forms when I look at the graphics. And here I can access other KPIs. There's about 100 KPIs in the system out of the box, and in addition to that, there are more than 600 reports that are available. Each one of those reports come with parameters and filters that you can use whichever way you want to. Now, you're looking at the what we call the HR desktop pretty much. This is where the HR people will be working, and based on their rights in the system, they will have access to certain menus and specific data available through those menus. Now, what I'm looking at are the three key entities that we need in order to set up the system, and that is the organization structure, the employee groups or the pay groups, and the jobs. Once I have that, I can go and define my time off policies, my payroll and compensation policies and deductions, and if that's all done, then we can import new employees or create new hires on the spot, and we can start paying them and do whatever we need to do. Another thing to point out is how do we get hold of functionality? How do we navigate through the system? Well, one way is to scroll through the menus. The other one is to just type the menu that you want. For example, if I wanted to get an employee performance plan, I will just type performance plan, and the system will give me my options right here. These are all the performance plans that are in the system right now. If I wanted to go and define some new training courses, then that's all I need to type right here, and my filter will come out with the correct item, and then I can get into the detail. Alternatively, I could be using my original menu layout, which we started out with for this product. That means instead of searching for menus, you could just scroll through them. Now you notice that because this product is designed to operate around the world, it is very much policy driven. Everything you do is dependent on the policies that you have defined. The system does not assume anything. We first need to tell it how we want it to operate. So for every part of the product, every area, there are policy setup menus. So if I look at recruitment and hiring, for example, I have my recruitment setup. I have the way we want the background checks to work. I have the rules about what happens when we employ new employees. What about the probationary periods? How do we handle onboarding? How do we handle end of employment? The activities that may occur during end of employment, the interview questions on the exit interview, the notice letters for end of employment, and handover of activities. All of that can be organized, and it starts with us configuring the module to do this. This is a modular product. There are more than 70 modules in here, and depending on your needs, we will configure those modules that you need. Others will not be shown. Now, the same thing goes for my payroll. Here I have my payroll general setup and my payroll and compensation policies and so on. We'll come to all of this in a minute. I'm going to go back to my standard menu search, and I will show you a couple of things on the organization management, the employee groups, and then the jobs. Then we will hire an employee and pay them, and just give you the basic feel for what this product can do. So if I take a look at my organization structure, our products are designed to handle the most complex requirements. So they can be very simple. We can set them up in a very basic manner, and they can be used by small companies if need be. But the larger the company, the more benefit they will get out of it, and the more use they will have for all these different features that we've got in there. So my organization structure means that we will define all the various organization units, and we will create the relationship between them in terms of which unit reports to which other unit, who's the head of the unit, and then we start grouping and classifying these things so that we can set up policies that apply to specific units. So I can have a group of units. I could define a unit as a department or a division or a branch or a company on its own, which means it'll have its own EIN number, or it could be a project, could be an activity within a project even. All of that is up to you. There's no limit on the number of levels in the reporting relationships. There is no limit in terms of number of units altogether. And by the way, because this product runs around the world, we have two different date formats. Obviously, we have the international date format, which is day-month, or we can operate with month-a-day in the US. Here I have the work schedule for this particular unit, and here I have the address information and anything else that I want. Some basic GL setup, but it goes a lot further than that. I have a username and password for this particular unit, so they can do self-service. I can see my org chart that is produced out of the box based on my setup. I could actually set up multiple reporting lines. Right now I'm looking at only the administrative reporting, but there could have been a functional and a technical reporting line too, for which I could drag and drop other departments over here and say that my administrative services reports not only to the office of the CEO, but they also report to the finance department. And in that case, I could say this is my functional reporting line. I'll have an effective date and an end date for that, and so on. We also have performance goals, strategic goals, and risks that we're monitoring for each individual unit. Now, once we have set up the organization structure, the next thing we're going to do is define our employee groups. Now, these employee groups are there for me to manage the hiring of employees and the automatic assignment of rules and policies when it comes to compensation and payroll, time and leave. Now, the only purpose here is to make it easy for me to manage this data. In other systems, these would be called pay groups. In our product, we call them employee groups because we use them for other purposes. You notice that I have other countries mentioned here, and that is because I can actually set up different rules for different countries within a single company setup. I do not even need to create new companies or separate employers in order to pay people in a different manner and according to different country rules. So let's take a look at one of these groups, which is administration staff. In this case, I have the pay period for August 2016 open, but obviously any pay period could be open for any particular group. What you're seeing here is some of the default values that we can apply to anybody that is hired within that group. There's a huge amount of freedom you have and options on how you would define and create your employee groups. But the one thing that matters most in distinguishing between different employees is their pay periods. So if they have different pay periods altogether, they must be in different employee groups. Here you can see that I can have employees that are paid salaried, that are hourly, or that are paid based on piecework, in which case the system can be smart enough to track that they are getting the minimum wage and that their overtime is done correctly also. Because this product is used around the world, pretty much everything else is configurable. We can choose our own weekends. We can set up a lot of rules here at the individual or at the employee group level, including the employee ID format that we're going to be using, the standard payroll parameters, obviously the pay periods themselves, the interfaces that we'll be using to connect to different ERP systems. Note that this can differ by employee group within the same system, and many more things. Okay, once we have set up these rules, we can also look at our payroll calendar. Here's an example. I will also point out the general ledger setup. This is how we're going to be integrating to ERP systems, and this is where we will define the GL structure in terms of segments. So I have standard 11 segments that I can choose, and what exactly these are for, I can indicate what my first segment, what my second segment will be, and so on. Now, once we have created our employee groups, we're going to go and define our jobs. And when I look at these jobs, I can see there's a long list of job titles in the system. I'm going to take a look at the first one for an accountant. And the purpose of this job classification is to give you the ability to define a lot of detail about these jobs, and for the system to therefore apply this logic, apply certain policies based on that, and to help you automate your HR processes. Now, if I don't do that, I can just go ahead with a job code and a job title and some basic classification. That's enough for me to be able to hire people. However, if I wanted to get some sophisticated HR going, I can go ahead and add job descriptions, education requirements, skills required for this job, certifications and licensing, experience that you need, interview questions that will appear on the job interview sheet if somebody gets interviewed here, so that the interviewer knows what to ask and what we need to be sure we get answers for, training requirements for the job, competencies that you need to have in this job, as well as risks and so on. We could either use a grade and step-based salary structure, or we can define the salary based on the point system, in which case, for example, we could use the Hay evaluation method. Now, the point about this is that it goes very deep, and depending on your industry and your the level of sophistication in the HR department, you can take this very far, or you can keep this very simple. And in both cases, we can obviously do your payroll regardless of which way you want to move with this. But if you want to do talent management and automate your recruiting processes very well and so on, then a lot of this stuff can be populated. Now, in order to hire somebody, or before I go there, let me just show you very quickly also your PTO policies, which we call leave policies in our case, because this is a more generic term. These leave policies are defined here, and you can go and create any policy that you want. Again, this product is used around the world, therefore everything depends on the configuration. In one country it'll work this way, in another country it'll work some other way, but none of them require customization for that purpose. So here I can set up some rules about carryover for the leave. What happens if you've reached a certain limit, and any hours that you accrue beyond that, what are you going to have to forfeit them, or can you transfer them to a different leave policy? You can choose, obviously, whether a leave policy or time off policy is paid or unpaid. Are you going to include or exclude weekends and holidays in your calculation? This may sound strange in the US, but in other countries this can be very common. And the accrual method of how we're going to accrue leave is also very flexible. It can be fixed or percentage based. It can be based on the month or the pay period. You can have pay in lieu of leave, or you can have leave in lieu of pay. Both of those are supported in the system, and there's many other items here. I have my accrual rates, which I can define here based on the number of days that I've been working, or based on seniority and other items, or based on the grade that I'm in. And then beyond that, we go into defining our payroll policies. That means deductions, earnings, allowances, bonuses, commissions. For example, here I have some deductions that I've defined, and I have a loan deduction because we have a loan management system, so I can go and define loan deductions which will be used to automatically deduct from the employee and get the installments processed that way. And here you will notice that there's a lot of settings. These are the setup screens. Keep in mind that this is all configuration screens that I'm looking at right now, where we have defined a deduction, and it's a flat amount, and there's nothing else that I need to have a loan defined, because it's going to be linked in a different screen. In the loan management setup, it's going to be linked to a particular loan benefit. But you will notice some items here. All of our compensation and deduction policies have effective dates and have stop dates. They can be set up with particular rate tables, or they can be based on, in the case of a deduction, it could be that it's related to a third party that needs to receive the amount that has been deducted. We can set up rules about priorities on deductions, and many more things. There's a ability to define the formula in case it's not a straightforward calculation. Here's some benefits. I'm going to take a look at one of these benefits. And here you see that just like the deduction definition form, my benefits will have effective dates and stop dates. They could be deferred in some cases. They could be taxable at the city or state or federal level. They can have different processing cycles. They can be a function of basic salary or gross salary. It could be a flat amount. Could be a rate table. Could be a health care plan and therefore a specific rate table. Could be a script if it gets sophisticated. And because it's a benefit, you will have the ability to define the initial accrued amount when you set up the system for the employees. Obviously, they will have accrued something already because they've been with the company. And we can also define the contribution percentage for employer and employee and the third party to which the benefit needs to be paid in case it's a premium for an insurance or something like that. Here I have an expression builder which allows me to create any formula that I want and access any table in the system to add variables from my database. Here I can see all my tables. There's more than 2,200 tables in Interact right now because there are 70 plus modules. So if I take a look at one of my tables, and then we go to the fields within these tables, and you notice that they are plain English because there's no limit on the description length of a field when we're using MySQL. So you can use any field that you want of any table to come out with a formula that you want to use to calculate an earning, an allowance, a benefit, a deduction, an expense, a bonus or a commission, or whatever else it will be. So now all of these policies, just like the leave policies where I didn't point that out, but like all policies, the point here is to create a general policy and then assign it to specific employee groups so that anybody hired in that group will be assigned the policy upon hiring. And sometimes if they are in a particular organization unit, which could be a project, it could be a location, could be a department, they will also inherit that policy automatically upon hiring. And then that means that the user only has to worry about the individual exceptions, those people that do not fall under general policy and have some exceptional case. And other than that, the system will automatically take care of things for you when you hire people and you put them in the right employee group. For example, if you're in healthcare and you are hiring a nurse, that nurse will be paid like all other nurses, so the number of hours that she normally works, the benefits and allowances and overtime rules and time off rules, all of that should be the same for all nurses. So there's no need for you to have to do any configuration when you hire another nurse in the system. So let me go in here and hire a new employee real quick. So we will put in a new employee in the system. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to make this real fast. So we'll put somebody in here. I'm going to choose the employee group, which is administrative staff. The system is loading the logic associated with that, which means all the policies that apply to time off and everything else. And I'm going to choose the department as the accounts payable department. And we will pick a job which is associated with that, which is the job of accountant. So she's going to be hired as an accountant, and she will be reporting to Barbara. I'm going to hire her as of July 1st. Again, I have the international date format set up here right now. Now the system has loaded for me all the standard policies. I do not need to make any changes if these policies apply to her. Otherwise, I can remove the policy as such. And remember that this is only in the case where there's an exception, because normally if the policy would normally not apply to her, then it wouldn't have been listed here in the first place unless you did your configuration wrong. Now I'm going to give her a salary, and because this is a monthly payroll setup for this particular group of administration staff. The system is going to have me enter the monthly rate. The checklist of items to be verified and checked off here is also configurable. So we've now put the new employee in the system. What I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly give her a username and password. So here's our new employee. She's been given employee number 615, and this is her employee record. We will give her a username and password. And we'll also give her a picture real quick. And we'll also put a quick note. Okay, so I've entered a note that she needs to provide a proof of residence. The next time I log in, I will notice this automatically. It'll be a sticky note that I can either handle right there, or I can postpone it till later. In my case, I will delete it. Now let's go and look at the self-service for Jessica and get her going, and then include her in a quick pay run. So here's Jessica Brown. This is the new employee self-service. Now she can immediately get involved in her probation period plan. She might have been given a probationary period plan. She can fill in her W-4 or her I-9 form. She could start her performance planning if she's already had a meeting with her supervisor. She can also sign up for benefits. There's a benefit enrollment form right here. She can request time off, or sign up for some training, request a loan. All this stuff happens in the self-service. She doesn't have any other tasks assigned to her yet because she's pretty new still. She can go and update her profile and scan some documents and attach them. She can see her timesheet. She can clock in and clock out for her work and do whatever else she needs to do. Now I'm going to go in here and put in a time off request and have you see how easily that's going to show up later on my payroll. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for time off on August 5th, and I will put in a quick reason here, which is I need to meet with my former employer, and I will go in here and put in 1 day of administrative leave as my request. Notice that leave can be tracked in days or in hours. Time off can be managed either way, and that really depends on what the standard is for the company and how you want to track that and how you want to allow people to request this time off. So now that I've submitted this, I'm going to go and take a look at my supervisor, which is Barbara, and see how she will view this request and how she will approve that. Barbara has her own self-service, obviously. She has a lot of pending activities here, workflow processes that she's involved in. One of those is the time off or leave requests, and I can find here that there is a request on the 5th of August. And based on that request, the expectation is that she will return on the 8th, because she will be off on Saturday and Sunday, and she's just going to take the Friday off. I'm going to go ahead and approve that. And by the way, Barbara, before approving that, could have looked at the leave planner. She can view all the different months, and she can see which employees are taking what time off and which days, and ensure that there's no overlap. In addition to that, the supervisor would be able to put questions right here on the chat channel. This is a question that she's already asked, and she could put any other question in there. She has access to a help desk, which would allow her to submit tickets that need to be addressed or handled by the payroll or HR help desk on any subject there is. Obviously, the point is that Interact has tons of service requests that you can do through self-service, but if there's something for which there's no standard request in the system, you can still submit a support ticket request so that somebody can deal with your inquiry. And you also have a suggestion box where, as an employee, you can go and submit ideas on how you think the business can be improved. Now, there are tons of things that you can do through the self-service, but we won't spend our time on that right now. So what we've done is we've gone and approved the time off request. There's no more time off request listed for Jessica. There are other items here, still training requests and timesheets and so on. That'll be subject for another presentation. Now, what I will do is show you quickly how we would run the payroll for this, but before I go there, I'm going to log in briefly with the username and password for the department in which we hired Jessica. Jessica was hired in the accounts payable department, and you will find out here that each department has what we call organization unit self-service. That means that the head of the unit or anybody that's been given particular access will be able to issue requisitions right here for the department, will be able to handle position budgeting requests, will be able to handle timesheet and work schedule assignments, can handle employee agreements, and anything else that is relevant for the department can be done through self-service. Now, I can also find my employees. I don't need HR to notify me about new hires and so on. This information will come to me straight away, and I can get the details. I can get the employee record right here. I could also find applicants that have applied for jobs in my department, and I will be able to run my own reports. So the whole idea is that to the largest extent possible, there is no need for you to wait for HR to provide this kind of information to individual department heads. Now let's go back to the main system. And what we'll do now is we'll run a quick payroll and show you what that looks like, and then we'll wrap up the presentation with. So Interact offers a global payroll solution, which means, as we showed you in the beginning, you define your payroll policies as per your requirements, you load your tax tables and so on, and then you can process payroll in any country. Obviously for the US, it's all set up as a standard setup already. And what we'll show you is some of the key steps that we would normally follow in order to run the payroll. So if I go and say I want to run the payroll for the administration staff, these are the employee groups or the pay groups that we've defined. You notice that there is a time off request that is showing here, which I need to initialize because the payroll has been fed this information, but a payroll officer needs to be aware and needs to confirm that this will be processed in the current pay period. The system handles many different types of timesheets with activities in there, with labor distribution, with all kinds of other information, in and out time or overtime timesheets only, whichever way you want to work. I'm going to keep this very simple for me, and I'm going to run, because we're dealing with an accountant that we just hired, we will just run what we call the automatic timesheet, in which case the employee will be paid regular time except for any time off that she took. And so now I've got her details. I'm going to take a look at this real quick. So if we now look at Jessica Brown's details, you will find that her work hours have been reduced with 8 hours unpaid leave or time off, and therefore she's not getting her full salary right now, and a lot of other elements have been adjusted, have been prorated based on this. It even applies to her allowances, and it applies to any other deductions, commissions, bonuses, benefits that we may have defined. Now, this automatic timesheet allows me to modify things right now. If for any reason I wanted to modify this and take out a allowance, which by definition she should have been given, but for some exceptional reason I'm not going to pay her that, but instead I'm going to give her a food allowance, all of this can be done on the spot. Any such changes, such exceptions, will need to be, or will automatically go onto the audit trail. And for example, here I could have gone, the car allowance is actually prorated also based on my settings, but I can go and modify this. So these changes will go onto my audit trail. Now, If I had many changes, I wouldn't be doing them manually. I would just import them from an Excel sheet with all the appropriate data in there in one shot. And this could be done for one individual employee, but it could also be done for the entire employee group or entire company. You can import all your changes in one shot. Here I have my consolidated timesheet. Here I have labor distribution. The system is assuming that everything is going to the accounts payable department. That's basically your home department, because I did not set up any other rules. If I wanted to enter some additional absent time, I could do this on the spot right here, or again, like anywhere else in Interact, you can import this from an Excel sheet, and I could also view her work schedule if there was anything unique about that. Now, if I have handled all my exceptions, either the ones that I wanted to do manually or the ones that are imported, then I'm ready to do the trial payroll. Trial payroll, like all other payroll processes, can be run by employee group, by employer, or I could choose individual employees or a group of employees within an employee group. So in my case, I'm going to run the trial payroll for all people named Jessica that are in the system, and specifically those that belong to the employee group of administration staff. So we'll go ahead and run this right now real quick, and you will notice that the system is going to give me a variance report, which gives me the main variances between the current pay period and the last pay period. It allows me to spot any differences that are large enough for me to worry about. Then we'll go and look at the detailed pay slip. Now this is happens to be set up as a multi-currency pay slip. I noticed here I have a New Zealand dollar food allowance somehow. Everything is handled here automatically. Keep in mind that you never saw me entering any particular data on my own. This was all these policies were automatically assigned, as you remember, based on the employee group that the person belongs to. Now I'm going to wrap this up and just show you a couple of other things in the menus. Because after this trial payroll, what we would be doing is first of all, we'd go and run all of our reports to make sure that we've checked all our pay registers, we've run our audit reports, and so on. And if we're happy with everything and all the numbers seem to be correct, then we can proceed with our final payroll. Just to point out a few other steps, this is the normal pay cycle that we're doing right now, and that normal pay cycle usually starts with the verification and validation. Then you run the timesheets, if there are any particular timesheets that need to be imported. Even if there are adjustments for the previous pay period, we have specific timesheets for that to calculate the difference and apply it straight away in the current pay period. For example, here I have a previous pay period timesheet adjustment for overtime labor distribution. That's a mouthful. And once we've handled all those unique cases, then we run the trial payroll, which we just did. We also could run a GL trial run that will give me the GL transactions, the journal entries that need to go to your financial system. And if you're dealing with direct bank deposit files in different countries even, you could produce a trial file for that first to verify everything before you proceed. Because once you've run the final payroll, you can no longer make changes to these things, because these tables are updated during the final payroll process. So if we're happy with everything, then we run the final payroll. We do the GL transaction processing. We print out paychecks, or we create the direct bank deposit file. If we wanted to distribute the money differently over different accounts, there would have been direct bank transfer distribution requests, which we handle, and then we go in and post these GL transactions to your financial systems. There are 4 types of payroll. There is the normal payroll cycle, which we just covered. Then you have the off-cycle payroll. That handles any transaction outside the normal cycle. We have the retroactive payroll, and we have the final or end of service payroll. Now, as you noticed, everything is policy driven. This is where we have defined all these rules. I haven't gone into garnishments and grants and lots of other things that the system can handle. We also have a very sophisticated costing setup that would allow me to track not only the direct payroll costs, but also include some indirect costs and overheads. And this what we call the labor burden cost, and this can be set up based on your own requirements. So once you have defined what exactly should be included to determine the yearly production hours of an employee, then the system can go and give you the exact cost of your employees and the correct rate you should be using to invoice your clients. We've also mentioned that anything that's withheld from the employee that should be paid to third parties, you can handle that through third-party payables. And in addition to that, we can handle the benefits management online. People can enroll in benefits, and we can send specific files either in HR XML format or other formats to your benefit providers. We have sophisticated health and safety management. We have a very strong risk management solution that allows you to identify and track risk and put risk mitigation plans together. We have talked about the fact that we have our own time clocks, and we can therefore poll these time clocks for all the in and out time transactions and understand exactly how many hours and minutes and seconds an employee has worked in the company. And this can be down to the project or activity level. And there's much more to it. The main point about the system is that it's one single solution. It's an integrated solution. There is no need for any data to be keyed in more than once. It is all done one time, and it does not need to be done all by the HR department. It can be done by whoever is closest to the data. The workflow will ensure that the right transactions are approved by the right people. And if it's not done on time, then you'll have alerts that go out to people through email, text message, or on their personal web page on their self-service portal. So that gives you a quick general idea about the product. There are 70 modules. All of them are up to you on how you configure them. We haven't talked about talent management. We haven't talked about so many things, but it gives you a first sense at least. Thank you for your time.